Hey, good people. How y'all feeling tonight? Welcome to the Couples Corner. I am one piece of the Couples Corner, and we are jumping in here tonight to discuss our topic for the evening. My wife is finishing up an event that she had tonight, and so I'm just going to get the party started. And if she's able to get in here before we end tonight, then she will do that. She'll join us. But if not, then we're gonna jump on and keep on keeping on. So for those of you who are tuning in with us with Facebook and YouTube as well as Instagram, how y'all feeling, all that good stuff. Make sure that you guys, invite some people to the conversation, share this, like this, and let's continue to build. So we're going to pray and we're going to jump into our topic for this evening. So you guys can get with us on tonight. So how y'all making out, man? How y'all feeling? Make sure when you jump in that you type in where you from and how long you've been together, all that good stuff, so that we can ensure that we're all on the same page and everybody's up to speed. So tonight, guys, we're going to talk for a little bit from the topic logic versus emotions. Logic versus emotions. And we're going to share a bit just about the differences in that, and what that can look like, what that can seem like, what it can feel like, because many of us operate from different places and perspectives. Some of the men operate, from one place, and the women, some operate from another. So we're just going to kind of discuss that tonight and kind of see see where things are, what it looks like. So we're going to pray, and then we're going to jump right in our topic. Let's pray. Father, we thank you for another opportunity to gather together in the Couples Corner. We thank you, Lord, for everything that you have done for each and every couple that is represented here tonight. We thank you, Lord, for a special blessing on these couples. And I pray, Father, that you would allow that which is shared and said on tonight, that it would be useful, Lord, that it would be tools that we can use in our relationships to cause us to be better, to have a stronger bond, to have a longer and a lasting relationship that will be healthy and that will be prosperous. We thank you for all that you're doing and all that you will continue to show us and teach us, so that we can be better and you can be glorified. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen, amen, and amen. All right, so we're talking about logic versus emotions and what that actually looks like. So let's talk for a few minutes about that logic versus emotions and what that kind of looks like. So some of us are going to vary on either side, and this is not, of course, an absolute thing, because you are a man doesn't mean that you're definitely going to fall on one category, or because you're a woman it doesn't mean that you're definitely going to fall in a category. It's going to be based on the individual and how that individual conducts themselves. So many people will function from a place of logic, which tends in many cases to fall in the area of a man. Many men operate from a place of logic. It needs to make sense. It needs to it needs to add up. It needs to line up, and the man needs to feel like what he's doing and what he's feeling and what it looks like and what it sounds like, that it's logical. It has to add up. Most men are not led by emotions. You do have some men who are emotional, who are led by their emotions, but the average man is going to be led by logic. You're not going to just tell him the sky is purple. He's going to be like, oh, okay. He's gonna look at that, and you're gonna have to make it make sense for him, because and again, this stems back to what many of us have been taught as youngins. As young boys, we were kind of taught to suppress our emotions. So in many cases, a lot of men have not tapped into their emotional side, because as a boy, you were taught you don't cry. As a boy, you were taught that showing emotions was a sign of weakness. As boys, we were taught not to overly communicate. You only give information that you're asked. You don't volunteer information. So there's so many different parameters that have been set for boys that has caused these boys to grow up into men who sometimes have not been fully tapped into their emotional side. Because today's society, a man that is tapped into his emotional side has the potential to be called a weak man. He has the potential to be called a simp. He has the potential to be called all of these things simply because he chose to tap into his emotional side. So, and it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing at all. Of course, in everything you want to have balance. So just like it's not a bad thing to be logical, but you need to have a balance of being logical with some emotion. The same way that it's not healthy to only be emotional and not have logic. You want to have that balance. And this is how and why, as couples, when you find that mate and you guys are able to lock in, that you're able to lock in and have success, because one is able to produce and provide a level of emotion that the other may not, while one is able to produce and provide a level of logic that the other may not. So that is what helps us to be unified and to be a strong unit, and to function as one. So when we're able to figure out which part we are and to play that part, and it doesn't mean that you're only capable of playing just that one side, but we can take various situations to where the logic would come in versus the emotion. For instance, a lot of men are disciplinarians when it comes to parenting and to children. So that man might be a disciplinarian. Now, the logic behind him being a disciplinarian is because he's trying to teach this child how to respect authority. He's trying to teach this child how to be independent, how to be self-sufficient, how to do these things, while it may seem insensitive and seems like it lacks some emotion, it lacks some love, it lacks some care. But the emphasis behind the approach is really to teach a lesson for awareness. But then on the flip side, you have people who parent from an emotional side. So they're going to look at how this can be handled or how this should be approached and what things can happen or should happen, which would cause things to turn out in a different manner. So it's not bad to have one that functions from a place of emotion while you have one that functions from a place of logic. And you have to figure out what place you fall in so that you know how to navigate, you know how to make it make sense, you know how to utilize it the right way, and you're in a position and you're capable of making sure that what you're doing from a pure place, number one, and that you are doing it with the intentions of it making your relationship better. So when you are striving to do that, and then you're operating from a place of logic or you're operating from a place of emotion, whichever place it is that you are operating from, that you're able to do it the right way. So here's one of the things that I'm challenging you guys with, tonight as a question. I want you all to chime in, answer and to share your thoughts. And of course, if you have any questions or comments that you want to share, do that. Write that in the chat and we'll discuss it. And we want you, this is not a dictator. This is not a dictatorship. This is a communication. This is a conversation. So we want you to be able to share your thoughts. So type those thoughts, type those questions, and we'll address them. But my first question to you guys tonight is, when you are dealing with things from a perspective of logic, right, versus emotion, how do you handle situations where your logic doesn't overtake your emotions? So you're not so logical that you're emotionless, as well as the flip side. For those who function out of emotion, how do you manage and handle situations where you're not so emotional that there's no logic behind your emotion? Because you have to understand, in your relationship, you have to know who you're working with. You have to know who your partner is. You have to know who's on your team. And you have to know how they function. You have to know their strengths and their weaknesses. And so if you want things to be effective, and you want things to be good, and you want things to, operate in a way that they should, you would want to make sure that what you're saying and what you're doing, you are providing a sense of of help, a sense of hope from that place of logic and or emotion. So for instance, let's take one of your, let's take your mate is dealing with an emotional situation. Let's use grief, right? Because all of us experience that in some way, shape, or form at some point in our lives, and that's a component that oftentimes we don't discuss, right? We don't discuss grief. We don't discuss a lot of times the planning process for when loved ones are gone, and not necessarily your mate, but just in family or in friends. How do you approach that with your mate when they are experiencing that, when they are going through that in real time, when they're going through that aspect of logic or emotion, or they're going through that transition of, someone transitioning and them having to start their process of grief, right? How are you able to support them in that moment? How are you able to show up for them in those situations? So in that situation, do you show up logically or do you show up emotionally? Are you there to comfort, or are you there to try to make sense of it? And it's not that one is right and one is wrong. It's just that in some cases, you may be stronger on one side than you are on another. And sometimes we run into challenges because we are looking for our mate to be us when they aren't. We're looking for them to respond and to react in a manner that we would, and they're not us. And we have to leave room and space for our mates to show up as themselves and to do things the way that they would, so that it makes sense and they're able to be their authentic self, right? So if you have a mate that is generally emotional, you have to leave space and room for them to show their emotions in situations. You have to leave room and space for them to show their emotions in conversation, in disagreement, in conflict. You have to leave room for them to show their emotions. And you can't discredit that because you come from a place of logic. You can't make it as if because they aren't coming from a place of logic that they're doing something wrong, that they're saying something wrong. So it has to be where you're able to identify that, hey, this is what they do and this is the perspective that they come from, but I understand where you are. I understand what you're going through. I understand what you're dealing with, and I'm not holding that against you. I'm here with you in it. And so if you process things from a place of logic, then I'm going to support you in that process. I'm not going to force my emotions on you. And if you're dealing with it from a place of emotion, I'm not going to force my logic on you to say, hey, it don't take all that, or you shouldn't do that, or whatever the scenario is. But you have to be able to show up from your perspective in the way that you are, but still be able to provide for people what they need. So that logic versus emotions is going to show up in a very strong sense, and you have to be able to do that without being offensive. That can be the challenge for one who is strong on one side but not as strong on the other. So if you're that one that's strong on the logic side but not as strong on the emotional side, you have to give grace. You have to have patience for that mate that you are in this situation with, that may not be seeing it from the logical perspective. They may only be seeing it from the emotional side. And you have to give room and space, and you have to grant grace for that. And you have to give some patience and extend some patience in that for them to deal with their emotions so that they can then get to the logical side of it. And the same thing vice versa, where you may be looking for some sense of emotion. It just seems like you don't care. It just seems like this isn't important to you, that this doesn't matter. Well, no, they just may be processing it because they're a person that functions from a place of logic and not from emotion. So I'm not going to be moved by my emotions, because some people feel like emotions change. And I'm not going to live by my emotions knowing that emotions change. That one minute I'm going to feel this way, and then the next minute I can feel a whole completely different way, because my emotions can change. I can go from being happy to being sad to being mad to being glad, all in a matter of moments. Where for someone who operates from a place of logic, that would not make sense, because you were just upset and now you want to laugh and joke. Some people struggle in their relationship simply because of things like that, where they are, they may have a disagreement, and in that disagreement, you like, oh, you were just upset and now you want to joke. Well, I'm over the upset stage, and now I want to move forward, and I'm using this. And so someone who may operate from a place of logic it may not make sense to them that you just went from a place of anger to a place of, of gladness, or you were happy, you know what I'm saying? Because your emotion changed. And then they seem like, oh, you all over the place, and I can't do this. And oh no, first you was just mad, now, you know what I mean? Like, so when you don't understand that, you can misjudge that, and you can start to think that a person that has shown their emotion and their emotion change, you can be one that starts to think that, oh, well, that was phony. What you was talking about before, you was all upset, and now you ain't upset no more. It just seemed like you was trying to get attention, or you were trying to be in control. You were trying to do this. No, that was their emotion. And that was a real emotion that they had at that moment. But that moment is now gone, and now they have a new emotion. And if you're not careful, you will discredit and you'll discard the emotions that your mate goes through and that they experience, because it logically doesn't make sense to you. To a person who functions from a place of logic, they're going to look at it like, this is my position and I'm going to stand on it, right or wrong, because this logically makes sense. Where a person that is not functioning from logic, I'm not thinking about it from that perspective. I'm not thinking about it, from a diplomatic perspective. I'm not thinking about it, from the perspective of, oh, this could affect this or could affect that, or have this type of impression or whatever on it. But the reality is, you got to know that when somebody is functioning from whatever place they're functioning from, you got to respect that. And sometimes we don't do a good job respecting people's feelings and respecting people's position. So if they come from a place of logic and you come from a place of emotion, don't say that they don't care. Don't say that they are disconnected, or they have, they're showing no signs of care, or it's not important, or you don't love me, because they're coming from a place of logic. It just has to make sense. 1 and 1 has to be 2 every time. It can't be 3 today and it was 2 yesterday and tomorrow it's 4, because they have to function from a place that makes sense to them. A person that operates from a place of logic, if it don't add up, it don't add up. Doesn't matter how you feel, doesn't matter what your emotions are, doesn't matter what you're experiencing and what you are dealing with in that process. It don't make sense to them. And unless you can make it make sense, that's where the phrase make it make sense comes from, because a person that's operating from a place of logic, when it don't make sense, it don't make sense. I don't care that you're crying. I don't care, that you're sad. I don't care that you're doing this or you're doing that, because you have emotion attached to what's going on, while they're only functioning from a place of logic. When a person is only functioning from a place of logic, 1 and 1 has to be 2. Anything else doesn't make sense, and it's wrong, because logic says this has to add up. So you got to be able to understand who you're dealing with and how they function, so that you're not getting yourself frustrated by the things that you experience, because you're dealing with someone that is a logical person and you may be an emotional person. And nothing is wrong with being either one, but you have to know which one you are, so that you are able to explain in situations. You should be able, as a logical person, to explain to someone that is emotional, hey, I don't want you to think that I don't care. It's just, this doesn't make sense to me, and I just need you to make it make sense. Because you want to change from, Comcast to this for your internet provider, and it's going to be $15 more. Well, if you want to change from something that costs less to something that costs more, you're going to have to make that make sense to a person that's logical. Because why would we want to spend more money to get the same service? Because you want to be able to explain that so that it can make sense. And once it makes sense, they can get on board with it. But if you're only looking at it like, oh, well, everybody else got it, and you can't provide the logic with it, you're going to have a fight on your hands, because that logical person is not going to just give in to the fact that it's different, or I just want to do it. I just want to try it. We should just live a little. Like that doesn't add up to a person that's logical. So it has to make sense. And so sometimes we will, in our relationships, come into different scenarios where we are operating from a place of emotion, while our mate is operating from a place of logic, and that's where we're clashing. It's not even so much that we disagree, It's just that our approach to it can be completely different, and that can make everything a little different. And when it's that way, you're going to show that. It's going to show up in your dialogue. It's going to show up in the relationship. It's going to show up in your problem solving skills. It's going to show up in your approach to stuff. And so we got to know who we're with. And we got to know how to manage that. And we got to know how to deal with that so that we are not offensive in the process. Because if you don't realize which one you are, you can show up in your relationship offensive to your mate, because you're showing up questioning them about things that they feel like you should be able to do from the heart. And I can't do it from the heart yet because you haven't made it make sense to me. I love you and I'm willing to do things for you, but it still has to make sense for me to do it, and to do it from an authentic place. Because if it don't make sense, it won't be from an authentic place. I'll be just doing it for hush money for you. I'll just be doing it so that you won't be upset. I'll just be doing it to keep down on the confusion. But then you'll see that it's not genuine, and then you'll still be frustrated. So we don't want it to come off that way, that, you're frustrated because things aren't going the way you think that they should, when in essence, it's really about the fact that we just haven't been able to see on the same page because things are happening different. I'm coming from a logical place and you're coming from an emotional place, and it just seems like we're bumping heads. And all it takes is communication. All it takes is for you to be able to explain your position and how you function and how you operate. And for those who are engaged, this is definitely a conversation that you need to have before you say I do, because you want to know if the person that I'm with is an emotional person or a logical person. Because when something goes down, the two of you got to be on the same page. And how are we going to be on the same page if I don't know how you function? You prepare for who you know that you're dealing with. But if you don't know your spouse and you don't know your mate and you don't know how they are, if you don't know that they're an emotional person, then you'll come off trying to just say things. You can't always be direct with a person that's emotional, because being direct with a person that's emotional, it can be offensive. In the same way, you can't be vague with someone that is logical, because they need details in order for it to make sense. So you got to know who you're presenting to so that you can give a quality presentation. And that's where your communication skills come in, and it allows you to be able to produce a healthy and a productive conversation, because I know who I'm talking to. You got to know your mate. You got to know who you're with. You got to know how they function. You got to know how, they roll, so that you can present it in a way that they're going to understand it. If you don't know whether you are with someone that is logical or emotional, that's going to be the equivalent of you showing up to a Spanish class trying to speak English to an all Spanish speaking group, because I just can't speak your language because you are emotional and I only know how to be logical. Even if you have a logical stance and a logical position that you operate from, you still need to learn how to function in emotion, because the person that you're with may function from emotion, and you need to be able to meet them where they are, the same way that you're going to want them to meet you where you are, that you're going to want them to show up and to be able to provide some sense of clarity for you for the things that they want to do, or what they're trying to explain, or what they're trying to accomplish. So it's all about us having the understanding of what side of the fence we're on, if we're logical or if we're emotional, and then being able to effectively convey that to our mate, to effectively convey to them how we learn. You got to know how you learn. You have to know how you hear. You have to know how you receive, because if you don't know that, then you're going to frustrate your mate, your spouse, who's trying to communicate with you and just can't seem to get it. And you're going to be blaming them when in essence, you don't fully know yourself. And because of that, and you don't really know the way that you operate or what side of the aisle you're on. So therefore, you can't even assist them in their quest of trying to convey stuff to you that would help things out with you guys. So we got to know the difference between if we are a person that is logical or we're a person that's emotional, so that we understand where we come from. And then we have to learn and study our mate so that we understand what side of the aisle they're on. So whenever we are communicating with them, that we're able to present to them in a manner that they will understand, in a manner that they will get, in a manner that they will be able to receive. Because listen, communication ain't no good if the person that you're communicating to can't receive it. That's not communication. Communication is a two-way street. It's not just the fact that you said it, it's the fact that you're able to convey it and they're able to understand it. They're able to interpret what you're saying. So and sometimes we get that mixed up. Sometimes we feel like, well, I told you. Well, that doesn't mean that you communicated it well. You may have told me, but in your telling me, it was not good enough for me to get it, understand it, digest it, and be okay with it. That's why I got questions. And you're getting frustrated because your spouse is asking you questions for clarity and you feel like, why don't you get it? This is common sense. It's common sense to you because you function from a place of logic. But to someone who functions from a place of emotion, it may not just be that easy. It may not just make that sense like that. So you got to know, this is where I am. This is what is going on. This is how I communicate. This is how I function. And this is how I learn, so that you can help your mate help you. Because if you don't do that and you guys are not on the same page when it comes to that, it's going to make your relationship have unnecessary strain. It's going to make your relationship have unnecessary turbulence. It's going to make your relationship have unnecessary trials and tribulations, all because you don't know what side of the aisle you're on. And when you know that, then you're able to communicate better because you know how you communicate, and you're able to give disclaimers in some instances because the person that you're communicating with will be able to understand, oh, okay, gotcha. That's where you're coming from. And when you know what you're up against, then you prepare for it differently. And some of us will be able to eliminate, and we will be able to dodge, we will be able to avoid a lot of conflict if we understood properly whether or not we were on the logical side or we were on the emotional side. And the more we know it and the better that we understand it, the better we'll be able to be. So my challenge to you guys is to find out which side of the aisle you're on. Are you a logical person or are you an emotional person? And you have to think about it from a couple of perspectives. You have to think about it from, how do I learn? Do I learn or do I hear? Do I understand from an emotional place, or do I hear, learn, and understand from a logical place? Because that's going to help the person that's trying to convey information to you. That's going to help your teacher. Yeah, that's going to help the person that's showing you something when they understand how you learn, when they understand how you hear, when they understand how you listen. So, when you know that, then you're able to convey that to the other person, and we can eliminate some of the guessing game. There's a lot of guessing that goes on in relationships that doesn't have to. If we're able to understand ourselves, then we can adequately communicate that, right? So if I know that I don't like this, then I know when I start seeing that trying to show up, I can correct it before it irritates me, because I already know that about me. I already know that that's going to frustrate me. So why not share that information before they go thinking that they're doing this great thing that you're going to love, when in essence it's really going to irritate you and frustrate you, but you never shared that information with them. So when you share it, then you're able to you're able to put it on the table, and it's known and it's clear. I don't like this. This doesn't work well. I don't respond well to this. This makes me feel this way. When you do this, when you say this, I feel this, I experience this, because now I'm able to put language to what's going on. I'm able to put language to the fact that I'm an emotional person. So when you say things, it's going to hurt my feelings. While the other person just feels like, hey, I said what I said, not because I was trying to hurt you. I said what I said because I was trying to help you. But if you're an emotional person, then you're going to hear with your feelings. You're not going to hear with your logic. So if you hear with your feelings, you're going to be easily offended by the things that people say to you, because you don't hear from a place of logic. You hear from a place of emotion. So anything that is said, you might think that it's a jab at you. You might think it's shade. You might think it's them criticizing you, when in essence they're trying to help you. You could be doing something wrong and they're trying to make you better. But if you only hear from a place of emotion, then you can walk away irritated, frustrated, because you let your feelings, you let your emotions get in the way of being able to effectively hear what was being presented to you, which was being done to help you. But you got to know how you hear, and you have to be able to communicate that to your mate so that they know, hey, I hear with my emotions. You might be saying some stuff that is wonderful, but if you say it in any manner that makes me feel any kind of way, I'm no longer going to hear what you're saying. I'm only going to hear how I feel. I'm not going to hear what you're saying. I'm going to hear what I feel. And if I can only hear what I feel, then I'm only going to be able to respond based on what I feel. And many of us know that feelings change. So I might have felt that way today and don't feel that way tomorrow. It doesn't make me bad. It just means that I no longer feel that way. So when you understand where a person is coming from and how they share and how they teach and how they, convey information, then you're able to kind of see what's going on and what's going, how things are transpiring. So when you know that, then you're able to function better from that perspective, because you're able to see, hey, guess what? They didn't mean any harm when they said that. They were trying to help me. I just heard it with my emotion. So if you're a logical person and that person presents something to you that's logical, then you like, man, that's good. I'm going to do that. I'm going to start that tomorrow. I'm going to try that now. I'm going to do this. I'm going to add that to this because it made sense. And I'm a logical person, so I received it. Where that same thing being presented to a person that's emotional can say, so you really don't care. So you really don't support. You really don't believe in what I'm doing because I heard it with my emotions, and what you're saying seems like you're against me. So many people have felt like somebody is against them because they gave them constructive criticism, trying to make them better, trying to make their situation better, trying to make, the scenario different. But if you can only hear with your emotions, then you're not going to be able to hear what's being said from the truth and the content and the substance. You'll only be able to hear it from the emotional side. So it won't make sense because it's only going to be, this is what I feel, this is what's going on, and this is what was happening. So the more that we, kind of go through life, and the more that we deal with our experiences and embrace them and understand that this is what I do, this is how I function, I hear with my emotions, then you then can start learning not to respond so fast, because I heard that with my emotions. I didn't hear the message. I heard the delivery. And the delivery made me tune out the message, when the whole point of what was given to me was given to me so that I could get the message. So then you can start disciplining yourself and say, you know what? Let me not respond because I heard the delivery. Let me respond because I heard the message. Let me not react to the delivery, but let me respond to the substance, right? That's going to give me a better outcome. That's going to make our relationship and our communication better. And even the one that operates from a place of logic, when you're delivering this information, let me make sure that in my delivery, although it makes sense to me and it seems like it's common sense, let me not rule out emotion. Because when someone hears with their emotion, you have to be careful with how you deliver the information that may be true, that may be helpful, that may be right. You need to make sure that it's delivered in a package that's receivable, because you're dealing with a person that hears with their emotion. So when you realize who you're with, and you understand the mate that you're with, and you understand the way that they hear, the way that they learn, the way that they respond, the way that they react, and what side they do it from. If they do it from an emotional side, or if they do it from a logical side, you understand that this is where they are, this is what they do. And as a result of it, now I won't be upset as often, because I know they don't mean me no harm. They're telling me the truth. It's just that they don't get no cut cards. They give it to me straight, because logically, I don't need to put filler in this crab cake. I don't need to add all of these extra things. Just give me the lump and let's go. Because logic says it will take less time to just say this what it is, this how I feel, this what I think, and I told you the truth, and I laid it on the line, and I ain't hold nothing back, and I ain't hide nothing from you. But how does that make the person on the other side feel, right? If you have two logical people, then they're going to go back and forth on the logic. And 9 times out of 10, they're going to debate because your logic may be flawed. I'm not saying it's wrong, but there's some things you didn't consider. There's some this, there's some that, and they'll go back and forth, and they'll go back and forth. But if you get two emotional people, then that relationship will be on a roller coaster because this person is reacting and responding from emotion, which is causing an emotion to the person that's hearing it. Now we got two people that are functioning from a place of emotion who have differing emotions, right? So, we never consider that things are a reaction. We always think that everything is an action. So what you said, what you did that from your heart. We never consider that what I said and what I did caused you to react and to respond that way. And I'm getting upset with your response to what I initiated. We generally don't think that way. We think everything is an action. We think that everything intended from you. This was premeditated. You already felt this way. You was just waiting for an opportunity to tell me. No, I was actually responding to what you said or what you did. And now you don't like that, but you're not considering the role that you played in what made me feel this way and what caused me to react or to respond that way. So as we grow, as we learn, as we understand our mates better, then we'll have healthier relationships because we'll know the person that we're dealing with. We'll know that my spouse or my mate, that they understand information from a logical perspective, or they understand things from an emotional. And then I'll know how to present stuff. And then I'll know how to get better results. And then I'll know that if I say this, this is going to happen. This is going to be offensive. You start to gain knowledge and understanding of the person you're with, and then your communication will be better because if I say this way, I might see some tears. If I say this way, it might be some other stuff that happened and I'm going to be frustrated and this, that, and other. So you just got to know that, hey, I can say this, I can do that because I know my mate. I know how they hear. I know how they listen. I know how they learn. I know how they receive. So I'm able to present things in a manner that is digestible for them because I know my mate. And when we're able to do that, then we'll have better success with our communication because we know who we're communicating with, which then lets us know how to communicate. And some people will think that that's too much. Some people think, oh, but that's being phony. I'm just being me. Well, you're being you. That's fine. But the question is, do you talk to a 2-year-old the same way that you talk to a 22-year-old? And is that the same way that you talk to a 42-year-old or a 62-year-old? I hope that there's a difference, right? So if you know who you're talking to, then you should know how to talk to them. If you know who you're communicating with, then you should know how to communicate with them in order for you to get results. The whole point of communication is so that you can be heard, received, understood, so that you can get results. So if I want to communicate, I need to know who I'm communicating with. I need to know how they receive, how they hear, and I need to make sure that I present it in a manner that is digestible so that they can get what I'm giving and we can move forward and not have to live in altercation. Some of us live in altercation because we haven't realized or figured out yet that I keep talking to a person that hears an emotion from a logical perspective, not considering their emotion. And the same vice versa. I'm communicating with a logical person, and my approach and my substance is from a emotional place, and I'm not getting the results I want, which frustrates me, makes me mad, makes me angry, makes me sad. And then they're like, but you started all this with this conversation that you didn't do a good job conveying the information to me. So the more we learn, the better we'll be, and the better our relationship statuses will be, because we will be able to function from a better place of understanding our mate, which will help us to be better communicators. And that's going to help us across the board. That's going to help us with our relationship. That's going to help us with our relationship with everyone, with our children, with our coworkers, with our family, because we'll then start identifying how people are, if they are logical or if they're emotional. And then you know how to present things. And then you'll be able to get better results. Because at the end of the day, hopefully, we all are looking for some results. We all may run into some conflict and some disagreements and some challenges and some speed bumps and all of that, but we're ultimately looking for some outcome. We're looking for some resolve. And that's only going to happen when we understand who we are in communication and dialogue with, how they learn, how they hear, how they listen, and how they're going to digest what I'm giving. So that's what my challenge is for you all this week. I want you to focus on figuring out your mate, if they are a logical person or they're an emotional person, so that you know how to communicate effectively with them. One of our biggest challenges, then, if any of you have any questions or comments that you want to share before I jump off, then we'll be able to do that. But you need to be able to understand where and how you are able to communicate that, right? So, when you're able to identify, I'm dealing with someone who hears and operates from emotion, I'm dealing with someone who hears and operates from logic, then I know how to convey my information so that I get results, right? And we just got to realize that as individuals, I can't give you what I want. I have to give you what you need. And when I'm able to give you what you need, then, you're able to do that. So wifey said, FYI, I'm emotional. How do you deal with me? So, great question. So the way that I deal with my wife who is emotional is I present things in a way that is not offensive, right? At least that's my goal. I present things in a way that's not offensive, because emotional people are easily offended. Why? Because I hear with my emotions. So what you say, I don't hear with my ear, I hear with my heart. So when you say something to me, it's going to my heart before it's being processed in my mind. So if you say it to me in a manner that is difficult for me to understand or to hear, then I'm going to struggle processing it, because my heart is already hurt, because I heard it with my emotion. Some of us have not realized that yet. So our delivery is what causes the biggest challenge, not our content. It's not our substance, it's our delivery. So if you're dealing with someone who is emotional, your delivery is everything, because if you don't deliver it the right way, they'll never hear it, because they hear with their heart first. And their emotions will say, the person that is closest to me, the person that I trust the most, the person that I'm the least guarded with, the person that I'm the most vulnerable with, just hit me in the heart. Why? Because they said something that they don't like. They said they don't like this about me. They said they don't like this, or they think that I shouldn't have said that, or I shouldn't have done that. Everything that you say as a mate or a spouse to someone who hears from an emotional state, it is 10 times different than it is to the one that you're talking to that hears from a logical state. Got to know that they hear from their heart. So you can offend them a lot faster and a lot easier when you present it, because delivery is everything. And so I strive to offer good delivery in what I say, so that it is not offensive, even if it's something that I try to present everything in a manner that is digestible. That's my goal. I hope I do a good job with that, babe. You can tell me if I do. But that's what I strive to do. I strive not to, even though she's a frank person, right? She's a frank, upfront person that will just say it like it is, right? She wants the truth, but you still have to deliver it to her in a manner that is digestible, because if not, it's going to be offensive. So, you just have to know who you're dealing with. And then when you do that, and you're able to present your information in a way that they're going to be able to understand and to hear, then I think that you'll get a better result. So that's my response. That's how I do it. Doesn't mean that that's what works in your situation, that's what works for me and mine, because I know her and I understand her. So I strive to present things to her that is not offensive in my delivery, even if the content might be tough. We do have to have tough conversations in our relationships, which are unavoidable. But the delivery of that said tough conversation is negotiable. It's unavoidable to have tough conversations, but it's negotiable how you have it. So you got to be clear that you're going to make the right decision. You're going to take the right approach, because ultimately, again, what we said earlier, we want to get results. And in the effort of trying to get results, I'm saying what I'm saying. I'm doing what I'm doing because I want results and I want things to be better. I want us to be better. I want the situation to be better. I want things to be better. And sometimes we have to learn that it's not about winning. It's not about winning. You can have a disagreement and you have to make the determination, do I want to win or do I want things changed? And sometimes to get things changed, you won't win. But you won because things change. Sometimes we're so stuck on wanting things to be our way and wanting to say things the way we want to say it, or we want, things to play out the way we want. Because, sometimes we have this rehearsed outcome in our mind of how things are supposed to be. And you can't do that when you're dealing with other people. If it was just you, sure, you can have this whole, it's going to go this way, it's going to do this. But when you have another person involved, you can't have that premeditated outcome, because then you're taking their right and their freedom to feel, to think away from them, because I already mapped it out. We're really not discussing it for me to hear your feedback. I'm really just telling you this is what we're doing and this is the way we're doing it, and you should like it. That's dictation. That's not communication. If it's communication, then there should be able to be dialogue. We should be able to go back and forth and share and exchange ideas so that we can figure out what's the best way for us. Yeah, I know this couple did this. Yeah, I know this family did this. Yeah, I know they did this. But what's going to work for us? And that's what we have to figure out, because that's what's going to get us to a different place, a different, level in our relationship, when we're able to provide that, when we're able to do that, when we're able to get those results. So we just got to know. You got to know who you with. You got to know how they learn. You got to know how they function. You got to know how they hear, so that you are able to react and respond in manners that they will hear you, receive you, and you'll get results. All right. Y'all got any questions or concerns? Drop them in the chat right quick. If I can answer them, I will. I told you, for those who jumped in a little later, my wife had an event tonight, and she just finished up. And so she was jumping in, commenting. And so, that's beautiful. But we got to know who we are. We got to know who we with. And we got to know that if I'm logical and they're emotional, I can't force my logic on their emotions. And if you're emotional and they're logical, you can't force your emotions on their logic. You got to learn how to meet them where they are, so that you can have a common ground and you guys can work together to achieve what you're trying to achieve. Because at the end of the day, this is all about us achieving. This is all about us growing. This is all about us getting better. But that happens with me first knowing me, knowing how I am, how I hear, how I learn, and likewise knowing my mate, how they hear, how they learn, so that I can present to them in a way that they're going to hear it and receive it. If not, I'm wasting time. I'm wasting time going into, like I mentioned earlier, I'm wasting time going into a Spanish class where they only speak Spanish and I'm in there speaking English. I'm wasting time, because that's not what they speak. That's not the language they speak. And you got to be able to speak their language, even if you can only do it, even if my vocabulary is small in that area. I still need to learn something to communicate with them. I can't just be in the room frustrated because they don't understand me, but I'm not doing anything to try to understand them. That's not healthy. So we have to learn some things, where we're able to get what we need to get for us, but we need to be able to explain how we get it. And then we have to learn how to speak their language. We have to learn how to deliver to them in a way that they're going to understand. It's just like, in life, you're not going to give a baby solid food if they're not ready for solid food. So you're not going to give, and this goes both ways. You're not going to give a logical person emotional intel when they're not ready for emotional intel, because they haven't tapped into their emotional side yet, because they've been trained to only be logical. The same way that you're not going to force your logic on someone who's emotional. So you have to be able to give it in the stage that they're in. That's what makes you a good communicator. That's what makes you a good teacher. That you identify the person that you're working with and how they hear, how they learn, and then you're able to take what I know you need and present it in a way that I know you'll receive it. That's what makes teachers so valuable, because they're in a classroom with 20 and 30 kids that all need the same lesson but are going to get it in different ways. And they know that this group gets it this way, this group gets it this way, this group gets it this way, and they take that classroom time and teach one lesson 3 different ways so everybody can get it. That's a skill, and that means that they took the time to learn the student and to learn the way that they learn so that I can teach in a way that I know that they would get it. The teacher can't quit because I taught a lesson and out of the 25 people in my class, only 3 of them got it. You don't quit. You just find a way to teach it to the other 22 that didn't get it yet. You have to be creative and come up with another way so that they can get it. And we have to be that same way in our relationships. So many of us have had failed relationships, not because the 2 of you didn't work. It was because the 2 of you didn't put in enough work to learn how to be effective in your communication to the person that you wanted to be with. You wanted to be with them, but you just weren't willing to put in the work to learn their language and to speak a language that they would understand, to study them enough to know the way that they hear, the way that they receive, so that you can present it that same way and be able to get the outcome that you desire. That requires work. And many of us want relationships. We just don't want to do no work. We want a ready-made relationship. We want a ready-made mate that is going to do everything that we want them to do, that's going to make us happy, but yet we're not willing to make any changes or adjustments to make them happy. They're just supposed to take whatever we give them and like whatever we present, while they're supposed to conform to everything that we desire. Not reality. Not reality. So, yeah, that's your charge this week. I want you guys to, really kind of think about that and look at that and look at your communication this week, how you communicate and how effective it is. See if you need to change some things. See if you already know that they are an emotional person or they're a logical person, and if you are approaching them in that manner so that they can understand and they can receive you and they can get it. If you are, good job. If you aren't, do the work so that you can be effective in your communication. Because guess what? One thing I know is I haven't met anybody yet who got married with the desire to be divorced. They got married because they wanted to spend the rest of their life with it. The reason that they chose divorce, or the reason that they're choosing divorce now, is because they just don't want to do the work to make it work. It's not that it can't. It's just that in order for it to work, you're going to have to change. And everybody's not willing to do that. Because we think that they should be tailored for me, not me being tailored for them. So we gotta work on that. All right. That's what your job is this week. I want to see how this goes, and I want to hear some good reports on what you were able to do this week with identifying and understanding your mate, and whether or not they operate from a place of logic or a place of emotion. And now that you're focusing on that, what you were able to do to get them to hear you differently, you were able to deliver your information differently, you were able to present yourself differently so that you aren't offensive, because you're now detailed in knowing who you are dealing with and not just taking them for granted. Because many of us have had many moments where we've taken our mate for granted and we just figured, oh, they'll be all right. Oh, they'll still be there. or they'll deal with it. They ain't got no choice. And that's inconsiderate, because we could study them and present ourselves in a better way that would allow them to not have to experience the stuff that they've experienced with us, because we were a little more, attentive and a little more detailed in our presentation. So that's where we are tonight, guys. Appreciate you guys jumping in. And we will see you guys next week in the Couples Corner. Y'all be easy. Feel free to share this, and feel free, to still share your comments, your questions if we, get back to it. And, if somebody drops something afterwards. And, of course, for those of you who got in late, you can watch the replay when we're done. All right. Y'all be easy. Take it easy this week. We'll see y'all next week. Peace.